All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of X to Succeed. This is Gearface. I'm so excited to be joined today once again by Jay. Jay, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always a pleasure to talk to you. Today, we are talking about a character who I am just now realizing that I did not clear a pronunciation with you for ahead of time. I'm going to let you say the name of this character. I'm going to copy you. Who is this?
Uh, I don't know the official pronunciation. I think it's Mei Lien.
Let's go with Mei Lien. That sounds
Yeah.
great. Please direct any complaints about our pronunciations to J-2S0 on Discord. Um, yeah, super excited to learn about Mei Lien. My understanding is that she is among the strongest characters in the game, so it'll be a good time. A couple disclaimers before we get started. Number one, as always, we're going to be talking about playing to win on this show. Uh, Playing to win is not the only way to play Exceed. You can play Exceed for fun. I recommend that you do play Exceed for fun. It's pretty fun that way. And if the lines of play that we describe aren't fun, please don't play that way. In fact, because Mei Lien is a season one character, playing to win with her might be a little bit tricky. You might have to find a legacy tournament. And even in that environment, there may be some local ban lists that you have to contend with. My understanding is that she's pretty contentious, so please Mei Lien responsibly. Um, Disclaimer number two is that Exceed's not a solved game. And even though we're going to be pretty prescriptive about strategy on this show, you're probably going to hear Jay say, always do this, never do that. That doesn't mean that we know everything. These are the rules to Jay's strategy with Mei Lien. They don't have to be the rules to your strategy. Um, Please develop your own lines of play and tell us all the reasons we're wrong in our evaluations. But yeah, all that said, Jay, please tell me a little bit about Mei Lien.
All right. Mei Lien, if I'm going to sum her up in one sentence, is she has good cards.
Okay.
All right, there you go. That's all you need to know, and we can cut it off right here.
Thank you
Actually,
so much for another episode of X to Succeed, everybody. You're right. That was our shortest one yet. Clocking in at approximately let me check here, 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Cool. All right.
all right.
Uh
So if I'm going
Anything
to give
else?
like an actual answer, I would say that Mei Lien has a lot of effects which are probably shouldn't exist. A lot of really strong stat lines.
Okay.
And tends to kind of be overpowering in terms of playstyle. She can stall a little bit. In fact, she does have some tools that let her stall very effectively. But she is mostly about setting up really strong attacks, or in some cases, just playing strong attacks with no setup.
So in previous episodes of the show, I've covered other characters who are banned or considered, overpowered by the community. I've had a Juno lesson, I've had a an Alice lesson, I've had a Carmine lesson, and many of those characters had sort of like this moment where I figured out, uh, oh wow, that's actually unreasonable that they can do that because there was a lot of working parts coming together to make them crazy. With Mei Lien, should I just be looking at these cards and be like, yeah, that's probably too strong, that's probably too strong, and that'll be the explanation that I need for why she's considered so dangerous?
Yeah, I think almost every card is unreasonable in some way or another for Mei Lien. And
Exciting.
it's a miracle that she isn't like Alice tier, but she is technically beatable with pretty much most of the cast. You just have to deal with someone who's a little bit over on everything they do.
Okay, cool. Where should we start strategy wise? We go with character ability.
Yeah, let's go with character ability. This one's pretty cool, actually. I really like the idea behind this. If you have a copy of your attack in this card, then the other copies have +0 to 1 range. So you have two copies of every card in your deck. If one's your attack and the other's in your discard, that means your attack has extra range.
Right.
The other side of that ability is if one copy of your attack is in your gauge and the other's your attack, then that you have +2 power.
Okay.
So it's
And
either extra range for just being able to hit all over the board, or extra power and being able to punish pretty heavily with that.
and there's no way to get both at once. I can't have
Correct.
simultaneously range and power from this ability. I've got to
Correct.
choose. So
Right. Like
over
if you played like an ultra and you had that card in your gauge, but you paid for it for your ultra cost, well, it had range, but then it lost it when it went into, or it had power, but it lost it when it went into discard.
Right. Okay. And that would be
Yeah.
checked before hit timing. So
Yeah.
no fanciness there.
Yeah.
So um this is, I mean, range is good, power is good. I like both of those things. In terms of how I'm choosing to set these up, I'm sure that if I just play Exceed and I hit some cards, cool. Now my later cards are stronger, or I boost and cool. Now my other copy of Sweep, it's range 1 to 4.
Yep.
Should I be thinking about Mei Lien's ability in those terms, or should I be thinking about it in terms of like setting up specific combos that I really don't want to put this card in discard because I really want to engage? Or is it just kind of like a flexible thing that I'm going to have to roll with the punches on?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Okay.
You do want to have like specific things that you want to have that extra range on. Um, think about stuff that's already fast, and now you're going to hit above the speed curve by being at extra range. So being able to say like a range 2 grasp is a pretty good setup.
Okay.
Range 3 grasp is pretty nice, especially since you obviously already have stuff to extend your range for after you've retreated.
Okay.
And then also the plus power is pretty backbreaking on certain attacks, like plus power sweep. That's really nice.
Using the grasp example you just gave, if I boost fierce, give myself +2 power, goes to discard. Awesome. I have a range 2 grasp. Having
Yep.
a 5 power grasp is cool, and there might be some matchups where that matters, but I'm not hitting a devastating breakpoint with that grasp
Yeah.
engage the way I would be with a mid speed engage or something, or
Yeah.
a
Exactly.
stronger card. Okay.
Yeah, and frequently the rule is if you have a card that's on curve normally, it's pretty good to give it extra range. If it's under curve, giving it extra range makes it into a cross catcher or something like a fireball, like a sweep. This is suddenly a fireball.
Right.
But it's also good to give like stuff extra power if you know it's going to hit a breakpoint. So, for example, hitting 8 power and sweep breaks focus.
Right.
Right. Hitting 6 power and assault is good in certain matchups where they have more than when they have 4 guard or so that you want to break through.
Okay, but it doesn't sound like it's so important to my game plan that if I really, really need to play backstep for whatever reason, and I'm like I can't do that because I need to hit with assault for the +2 power on the other assault. Like
Yeah.
those considerations might come up, but really I do just need to play what I need to play in the moment, and then if I get either way, I'm getting a bonus, and I can probably roll with that bonus.
I would say you want that +2 power if you know you're going to hit with both copies pretty reliably, right?
Okay.
Like if you know you're going to hit with both of these things, that's why I use sweep as an example. Sweep's pretty reliable to hit with in a lot of setups, and you know you're going to hit with both copies if you're planning to hit with both of them.
Right.
So you can get that +2 power, and you're not worried about throwing away the attack as much.
Okay, I gotcha. Okay, cool. How about the Exceed mode? Should we talk about that now, or should we?
Yeah. Exceed mode is fantastic because it is more of the same, but
Oh my god!
yeah, +0 to 2 range. So now you're hitting all over the place with just about anything. You got range 5 on spike and sweep, and suddenly like there's no real counters to some of these cards.
Yeah, I mean now sweep is your cross catcher. Even at range
Yeah,
2,
exactly.
you're not getting out of that. So and
Yeah.
the +4 power, all that stuff I said before about if you get grasp in your gauge, you're not hitting a very important breakpoint. A grasp that beats sweep is a pretty.
Now you're at power 7 on grasp and cross. So now instead of using grasp and cross to be above curve, you're using grasp and cross to just flat out win strikes, assuming the opponent's not above curve.
Okay, so if you can, if you are planning to exceed the threshold of power that your card needs to be in order to hit a breakpoint by having another card of its type or another copy of the card in your gauge is very low. Like grasp and cross are not high damage cards. You'll just plow through stuff.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so is my exceed mode plan A? Should I be thinking about doing this every game that I can?
I would say Exceed mode is tied for Plan A. I would definitely want to do it every game. And I think Mei Lien has good enough gauge generation that you can do that every game.
Okay.
The only times you don't do it is if the immediate tempo loss is bad for you. Say you want to threaten an Ultra, and you can't do that and Exceed on the same turn. But you do want to Exceed at some point if you're not going to close out the game in the next couple of turns.
Okay. I'm also noticing, like, just for as though we haven't hyped up this ability enough. This works on defense. I can do defensive range 3 grasp, and now I've basically just won the range 3 mix up on my own just with that. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Like, what actually beats range 3 grasp? Because there's probably not a whole lot of things in the game that beat that.
no, there really aren't. I mean, like, people can look at Exceed Mode Axle and
Yeah.
find, all of the many, many, many pages of discourse about that. So my Exceed Mode ability, my character ability in general, is just really, really strong, and it's free value. This is not something that I
Yeah.
need to invest in. It's just going to come up over the course of the game.
And we need to mention the unwritten part of her character ability, something that's in her character ability, but it's not in the text of it.
Okay.
What is the order of operations for playing an EX attack?
So you put the EX attack, down. You reveal it. Uh, you validate the EX, and I believe it goes to discard at that point.
Right. One copy goes to discard after you validated, right?
Okay.
So that means your EX attack is immediately given that plus range.
Every EX attack I will ever play has bonus range on it.
Exactly. So,
Okay.
as an example, EX sweep when you're exceeded is range 1 to 5, power 7, speed 3, 1 armor, 7 guard.
Yeah, that's
Those
ridiculous.
are ultra stats.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So
And I mean, there's the tension with EX decks that always exists of like, well, I wanted to hit with the second copy of that card. But
yeah,
one of the reasons that Mei Lien wants to hit with the second copy of a card is so that she can get her bonus stats.
yeah.
My EX deck just gave me that. It just might not have been 2 hits with sweep, but if I need an EX sweep, I have an EX sweep, and it's better than everybody else's EX sweep.
Yeah. So this little feature of her means that on turn 1, offense or defense, she has an incredible range of threats because she can throw out EX assault, EX sweep, EX spike, some of her EX specials, and hit with stuff that's not supposed to hit on the first turn of the game. Right? It's supposed to require some setup or some movement, and she can just say, "Well, I have both copies, so now it does hit." And I'm going to get some free damage right out of the gate with that.
Basically, just playing the range 3 mix up at range 4, and a lot of the counters to those cards don't really exist there anymore.
Yep.
Okay,
And
interesting.
Just very scary in terms of the number of options she has right out the gate.
Okay, cool. Once stuff is in my discard or in my gauge, obviously, if something's in my gauge and I need it in my discard, I change cards, I move, I play footsies, I play Exceed. There's plenty of ways to get gauge and discard. So that seems like, at least so far, seems like a less committal option is if I hit with something and it goes to my gauge, it could be in discard if I need it later.
Yeah.
Do I have ways to reverse that process, or is it really just like I got to reshuffle and then hit with a card again?
There is one option. We'll get to that later. But technically, that is one of her weaknesses, right? When she has stuff in discard, it starts to narrow down her options. It narrows down what the opponent has to worry about. So once she does her EX sweep trick, she's not going to do anything involving sweep for a while until she reshuffles.
Right, because one's
And
in
that kind
gauge,
of narrows
one's in
down.
discard. Right.
Yeah, that narrows it down what you can think of. And so the longer the game goes on, the more constricted she becomes, the less mix-ups she can throw, and the more the opponent can play against known threats, which makes her life not quite as comfortable.
Got it. So,
So she does rely pretty heavily on that timely reshuffle to get that uncertainty back into her deck and get a lot of those strong options she's already played back into her deck.
Okay, sure, that makes sense. So especially in long games, I should be planning to do that at the right time. So
and then the second weakness of that, by the way, is that when she's reshuffled, she doesn't have a discard anymore, and so she's a little bit vulnerable for a turn or two. Yeah,
and if she had things engage in order to maintain her bonus power, those things aren't being reshuffled. She doesn't get to recur them.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of the interactions with the reshuffle are actually kind of require some pretty careful timing and evaluation. But if all I care about is having access to the broadest span of options for my character ability, having something engage is probably better because it could go in discard later.
Having gauge is pretty good, yeah.
Okay, yeah, just as a general rule, you can do other things with gauge as well. Okay, cool. Shall we get into the kit itself?
And let's do the boost first. I'd say they're significantly less exciting, but it's worth going through them because we'll get to look at how these intricacies affect stuff later on. So let's go ahead and start with her Ultra Boost. The Falling Star Wish on Raijin Oath. You search a deck for a card. You put it on top of your deck, meaning that you'll draw it at the end of this turn that you play this boost. You put it in your gauge, or you put it in your discard. And so since we just went over her character ability, it's pretty obvious what you're going to do with this, right? You're either going to get a card you want to play, or you're going to get a card that you want to add extra range to something, or you're going to add extra power to something.
Right.
So this is just an option select for how you want her ability to work.
Right, so that feels good, and I feel like there's kind of two meaningful objections I can think to that. One is that even I have heard of the card Raijin Oath,
Right.
and I'm sure we'll get to Raijin Oath in a second and why you might not want to boost this attack. But
that's a very big asterisk on this for the time being.
That seems important. But the other thing is that if I put something into my anywhere, actually, if I put it in my deck, gauge, or discard pile, I'm passing the turn to my opponent. If I put it in my gauge or discard pile, they know for a fact that I probably have that in my hand.
It's a pretty big telegraph.
Okay, and
you use the telegraph when it doesn't matter that they know it because it's going to hurt them either way.
Got it. Okay, and I mean, it is very, very possible. I mean, my thought was like reading exists, and you have to watch out for that. But there's plenty of times in Exceed where you can know exactly what your opponent is doing, and it doesn't matter. So it sounds like keep that in mind, but don't let that dissuade you if you have like a perfect setup.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, maybe let Raijin Oath dissuade you from playing it, but don't let that particular problem dissuade you if you can dodge around it.
Yeah, correct. It's a pretty reasonable utility boost.
Okay. Do you find yourself using this pretty frequently?
I use it once or no times a match.
Okay. Sounds good. I can't imagine why. How about, are we just going down the line?
Give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
Yeah, of course. I will play my technical difficulties music. Hey, everybody, we're back. Sorry about that. Minor interruption on Jay's end. We should be good to go from here. We were just discussing Raijin Oath and Falling Star Wish.
Yeah.
Anything else to mention about this boost, or should we just go right down the line?
We can come back to this later if we're looking at more interactions, but I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay.
So let's keep moving on to the next boost. We got Tailwind on Dragon Tempest. This is a 1 cost boost. It's close 2 spaces and strike. This is a pretty standard boost profile for getting closing the gap and hitting the opponent.
Yep. Okay.
This is fairly useful for some stuff we will see about the kit's shape overall. But the probably most obvious interaction is that you got something in your gauge and you want to close in the gap to hit them with the other card of that. Since you're usually playing at range, this is where you come in and play close up and hit them hard.
Okay. So typically you would prefer to be using your range and using just the shape of your kit to kind of be far away from the opponent. But
yeah, range is particularly good for Mei Lien because you're using the range to break the speed curve.
Right.
And this is a case where you either don't care about the speed curve or you're still going to break it even at close range.
Okay. Sounds good. So again, kind of a specific use cases will present themselves. I should be planning to use this when those situations come up.
Right. Okay. Tailwind, I would say, is much more commonly used than Falling Star Wish. There's probably times in every match where I want to use Tailwind.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, again, I am the Season 1 neophyte here. I don't know anything about these cards. The fact that I've heard of Raijin Oath and have not heard of Dragon Tempest, I think is probably going to be relevant.
Dragon Tempest is very good, but we'll get to that later.
Okay, fair enough.
But Tailwind is also very good. So Tailwind has some pretty important use cases.
All right, so I should be. This is a difficult choice to make sometimes. Then
it is a situational choice to make. I would say you'll know which situation you're in based on the game state, and we'll get into that for sure.
Of course. And we just keep on going. Lightning strikes twice.
Lightning strikes twice. Fantastic boost. This is this is one of your. So after you return your attack to your hand and put this card into your gauge, right?
Right.
You can hopefully see some of the applications already, but this is where you can, reuse your unique ability, right?
Right.
You're getting extra power on an attack or you're getting extra range on it, and normally that means you have to reshuffle before you can make use of that attack again.
Sure. So
Lightning strikes twice means that you're going to get to use that attack twice when it's getting those bonuses. The power of that kit should not be understated. That's really valuable in certain cards.
So when you were saying earlier you want a card in your gauge when you are fair, sweep is probably better. Hold on a second. But you want a card in your gauge when you're fairly certain you are going to hit you're going to hit with it twice.
Yeah.
So I've got a sweep in my gauge. I've got another sweep in my hand. Awesome. This is 8 power. I sure would like to be able to do this attack twice.
Yeah, actually, I'd love to be able to play 3 sweeps per reshuffle, and this says I can do it.
Even without the character ability, that sounds pretty good. But the fact that I have this here and this in my hand presents a pretty compelling use case for like why this boost is beneficial to me. Or honestly, or if the other one's here, anything that synergizes with my character ability just lets me double dip on it.
Yeah, and this honestly presents a lot of opportunities for creative play as well. It's hard to get into that in an analysis video. That's going to come down to the way you as a player uniquely see your options. But there are different ways you can play around with this and get different setups and combos that you might not normally have.
It also, if you are, I can see like if you are interested in hitting with Dragon Thrash the attack, this boost, playing this boost is going to add it into your gauge. It's an after effect. You don't even have to hit with it. You can do all sorts of fun. You can cross out and not bend your cross because you got your after timing.
Yeah, and there is actually one additional feature of this boost. It is an after timing. It is not a hit timing, meaning that even if you missed, as long as you still got to go through your attack's triggers, you weren't stunned beforehand.
Right.
You get gauge.
Right. Okay. So I don't get the card I hit with engage. I wouldn't anyway with this attack, but I have it. I have gauge banked anyway. But so for Dragon Thrash the attack, this is a way to get it into gauge that I could then hit with the other copy. It seems like there's a lot of kind of fun nuance to the way that I could use this boost.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
it's got a lot of flexibility there, and there are undoubtedly some creative options on how you use it. But a lot of the times, the way I'd recommend looking at it at first is just going to get a double tap on a really good attack that I like.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, creativity is awesome, but what if you could just hit with sweep 3 times? That sounds pretty good. It sounds like
or hit with sweep twice and then get a light boost. Like there's some good stuff with that.
True. Yeah. I mean, it comes back to your hand. That doesn't mean you have to attack with it.
Of course, the downside of this is that if you're on offense and you're playing a normal attack, you are going to be vulnerable to reading on that follow up.
Oh, sure. Okay. So just like with Falling Star Wish, be careful. Again, probably don't let it dissuade you completely because this is a strong play, but keep an eye on what your opponent could do to you if they knew what you had in your hand. Okay. Sounds good.
All right, moving on. We have New Horizons. This is a very simple one. It's draw 4 cards, discard 2 cards. This is a good way to kind of filter through your deck and make sure you have the right discards you want. You can also potentially trigger a manual reshuffle this way, and then that mandatory discard 2 means that you still have something in your discard after that reshuffle.
Okay. The ordering there is I draw 4 cards. At some point, I will draw from an empty deck. That triggers a reshuffle. I draw the last card I was supposed to draw. Now I discard 2 cards, so the reshuffle happens in between the 2 sentences.
Correct.
Okay.
It's not a flashy boost, but it does have some pretty functional uses, specifically because it's Mei Lien. It's also more efficient than change cards.
Right, yeah. So this is 1 force, 0 force boost. I am spending 3 cards to get effectively 5 because I'm drawing for end of turn. That's cool, but I also care about what's in my discard pile.
Correct.
So they're like normally discard 2 cards is sort of a mitigation or a downside to keep the card draw from going out of control. That actually sounds pretty good to me. If I
Yeah,
needed the
yeah.
right thing in my
The,
discard,
the
it's not
discard 2 cards is beneficial in this kit for sure.
okay. Okay, cool. Is that kind of a like is that an important thing for Mei Lien to consider that like how do I put this? Um, the velocity that my cards are moving around, like I do need stuff in my gauge. I do need stuff in my discard.
Hmm.
Um, is it that I need to uh I need to boost New Horizons when I just need raw material in my discard, or am I again trying to set up kind of specific combos?
Uh, I would say it's more about that efficient card draw plus material in the discard. It's not specific to any particular combo, I don't think.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I should really do this when I need 4 cards.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and ideally I
It
am
is it is a it is a better version of change cards action for you.
right. Okay. And then the rest of the stuff is just kind of a bonus on top. Ideally, it sounds like I should probably be discarding the cards that I have not seen the other copy of in my hand yet,
Mhm.
because then I get the benefit from them later. Um, okay, sure. And it seems like this doesn't quite have the same level of like the problems that Lightning Strikes Twice or Falling Star Wish does. If I discard a sweep and an assault, my opponent is not immediately thinking, he has the other copy of Sweep and Assault in his hand. I might, but it's not quite as telegraphed as these two would be.
Yeah, that's pretty reasonable to say. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so good card
Um,
draw boost, got some other benefits. How about Tempestuous?
okay, tempestuous. This is uh, where we see some interesting tech kick in because Mei Lien does have the ability to cycle through her cards very quickly. If she's facing someone with some stall, she might be worried about the fact that she wants to reshuffle early, but maybe that will cause her to deck out if she does so. And Tempestuous is her unique solution to that problem. This she switches her discard in her deck and she shuffles her deck. Uh, this is not a reshuffle action, but this does get you cards back into your deck, and it
Okay,
does keep some cards in your discard because your previous deck is now your discard.
so if I was on my final the final card of my deck, and I have a gigantic discard pile, this is effectively a reshuffle. It just doesn't trigger my action.
Yeah.
I could conceivably boost this twice and have like 4 decks worth of game to play if I needed.
Setting it up correctly, you can do this an infinite number of times and never run out of cards.
Oh, okay. So she's pretty tough to stall out, is
Yeah,
what you're
you have
saying.
one copy of this in your discard. You boost the other copy. The
Oh,
discarded copy goes into your deck, and then you'll eventually get it again and be able to
you
boost
will
it again.
eventually. I see. Okay, so you'll
Yeah.
always cycle between these two. In practice, outside of like hard stall, it
Hmm.
doesn't really like with this character ability. It does not seem like I'm lacking for damage to kill my opponent.
Yeah.
Is it likely that I will need um to have a free shuffle multiple times over the course of a game?
If you do need a free shuffle multiple times, it's usually a sign that things are going badly. Mei Lien does not have very good survivability profiles. She has really good damage. She has good speed, so she does have the ability to kill the opponent. But if something's causing the game to go on for a long time, that might be a sign that maybe the opponent has some kind of counter to you. In which case, it's a bad sign that you're having to reshuffle multiple times. However, getting that one extra reshuffle is really valuable. So even doing it just once is pretty good for you.
Okay, and then if like in situations where I don't need the sustain to keep a long game going long enough to close my opponent out, is there also just enough value in it, like if I see that my I would like the things that are currently in my deck to be in my discard pile in order to threaten some options that I have in my hand.
Hmm.
Is that ever worth it on its own, or should I really just be playing this when I need to uh, keep my ammo lasting me longer?
That can certainly increase the value of this card, but you do use this primarily as a um, extra reshuffle for all intents and purposes.
Okay. So awesome. I've got great options that could be in my discard pile that could be beneficial. That's
Right.
usually not enough of a reason to play it on its own.
Yeah.
Okay.
It also has a weakness, which is something we've already noted as a weakness on other cards. When you swap your deck and your discard, the cards that were previously in your deck are now visible to the opponent. And of course, the cards that were in your discard were already visible to your opponent.
So
So if they pay
this
attention, what
again
does that
reveals
tell them?
hand information.
It tells them your entire hand, except for the card you
Interesting.
draw at the end of your turn.
Okay. Okay, so she actually has quite a few things that inadvertently leak information.
Right. And that is a significant weakness of hers, is that her playstyle and a lot of her cards will filter information to the opponent more quickly than other characters tend to do.
Okay, and the way that you mitigate that is you use these effects carefully. Obviously, you take care to not give them information that's easily exploitable, but also you just murder them, right? Like
Yeah,
you hit
you
them
just,
really hard and do things that they can't deal with, and it doesn't matter if they know what's in your hand or not.
if your attacks are good enough, it doesn't matter what they gain out of it because you're gaining more.
Okay, and so just like with Falling Star Wish, just like with Lightning Strikes Twice, uh, assume that they will try to take advantage of this information, try to make it not matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, sounds good.
We got Winds of Change next. Draw one card for every card in your hand, and then discard that many cards. This is about, let's see, if I'm doing my math correctly, this is worse than change cards. Yeah?
Right.
But you do the discard after you've drawn, so you do technically get to have more information about what you're discarding.
Okay.
So it is very similar to New Horizons. The use cases are pretty much identical. It's just that Winds of Change is going to be worse most of the time.
Okay.
It's going to be worse when you don't have very much of a hand because you're not drawing very many cards. Your change cards action is smaller.
Right.
It's going to be worse when because you're less one card less efficient.
And if you have a large hand, you're drawing a whole grip of cards.
Yeah.
But then you need to discard for. Well,
Yeah.
no,
You will be burning through your deck very quickly that way. Yeah.
you would be burning through your deck quickly. But I think the specific thing that I'm worried about would be, I have a handful of 7. I draw 7 more cards. Awesome, let's go. I discard 7 cards. Now I don't need to worry about the hand size limit. This card can't really put me over the hand size limit.
I believe you're correct.
Okay, so if I do draw it with a lot of cards in hand, I'm not discarding for the hand size limit and also my ability, or also the boost itself. It's
right.
okay, so it's not that bad to do it. It's just that's a lot of cards
Yeah.
to discard. Okay,
It is a lot. It's a lot of cards to discard. It's again, you're kind of filtering your deck very quickly, which means you're inadvertently giving a little bit more information away.
okay,
It is a situational boost. I would say I would almost always prefer to use New Horizons to get those cards in hand. But Winds of Change does have use cases, so I won't say never use it. It's just be careful about it.
okay. So we've now seen 2 pretty substantial card draw boosts. They're not exactly free. They both involve discarding something. Again, as we mentioned, that's not necessarily a downside other than the information bleed. You also mentioned that Mei Lien's gauge generation is pretty good. It's good enough to exceed and maybe do some other stuff on top of it. Is her economy in general just pretty robust? Can she usually just afford the things she's going to need?
I'd say her economy is better than average. It's not her weak spot, but it's also not something she is noticeably going to excel at. She has all the economy she needs, though, is what I would say.
Okay, cool. So it's not a standout the way her damage or her range control is, but it's not gonna kill her.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha.
So we got one more boost. Gale Extension, 1 force cost, but it's worth it. Plus 0 to 1 range and strike. This, of course, stacks on top of her character ability, so you can potentially get, 0 to 3 range when she's exceeded, or you can get this 0 to 1 range and then also have plus power on your strike.
Right.
And then of course the 1 force cost means you could be discarding the thing you're striking with, but of course you just EX attack a lot of times in that case if that was what you were trying to do.
Right. Okay.
But
But if that force cost comes from gauge too, like you can move
mhm,
stuff around that way if you absolutely need to. You're just sacrificing power when you do.
yeah,
So all right. So it's like reach. It's like reach on other characters that like people have probably seen this boost profile before. But those characters who have reach don't necessarily have this stuff that's going to interact with what range will give you.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. So ideally, would you be using, like you've mentioned a couple times now, you would prefer to have stuff engage that you're probably likely going to hit with again. Um, I, bonus range is a pretty great way to confirm that you're going to hit something again. Would you typically like to do this when you are trying to land something that's going to have bonus power from your gauge, or is having doubled up range sources like is that like a competitive use case and you'd be good with either one?
It's going to depend on the matchup and situation again, but yeah, extra power on something that you normally wouldn't be safe on that suddenly becomes safe is really strong.
Okay.
This is also another way that she's breaking the speed curve. We see now that with just based on her ability alone and this one boost, we already see that she can kind of ignore the rules of the speed curve, right?
Yeah, pretty much when and like this is on defense. This happens all the time.
Yeah.
This is an action that she's taking. But yeah, like if she wants to invest, she can decide the speed curve doesn't really apply to her. And like
And at maxing out, let's say +3 range on some stuff, um, speed doesn't even matter at some point because you're just outranging what most attacks can even consider.
sure, yeah, the speed curve, like the idea that range and speed and exceed are kind of fungible
Mhm.
goes a certain extent, right? But eventually, the thing that like with the range 3 mix up at range 4, your counters might not exist there anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Like
so
at a certain point, speed doesn't even matter anymore because there's nothing that hits there.
right, okay. And so range in abundance can actually be more important than speed sometimes if your opponent is that far away from you.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so like obviously many strong effects going on just in her boost kit, and I know we're about to get into her attacks, but I want to note that like a lot of the problems that I'm not problems, a lot of the questions that I'm asking, your responses to them are some variation of it depends, right? Like it could be good to have it in your gauge. It could be good to have it in your discard. It could be good to use this to confirm
Mhm.
power or to double up on range. These seem like good problems to have. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
it,
You're usually dealing with here are two good options I have, and which one's just a better good option.
it seems pretty difficult to make a really bad use of a lot of these tools. The struggle is going to be what is the best use, and that will require quite a bit of game knowledge and understanding to squeeze everything out of Mei Lien. But
Yeah. Yeah.
just flat out of the
Malian.
box, this is good. These are good
Yeah.
things.
Malian really exists in the meta where reading is king. Like if you're gonna if you're up against an opponent who doesn't know reading, her cards just based on the boost alone, we were saying that there's just no downside to stuff.
Right, right. If you aren't worried about information control, that's
Mm.
a big deal in your favor. Okay. All right. Shall we talk about the attacks now?
Yeah, let's go back to the ultras. I know we got hyped up Reg and Oath, and it's time to finally look at this baby and see what we're talking about. Have you seen this card before?
I glanced upward when when we were talking about Falling Star Wish. All I know about it is that I know it by reputation. I have never played it.
Right.
I have never seen the stat line.
It is not a complicated card. It's 3 gauge. It's got stats, right? Range 4, power 10, speed 6, and ignore armor.
Right.
There's nothing fancy going on here. It's just damage, and it's just going to obliterate whatever it comes up against.
I
At
mean,
speed 6 and range 4, um, there's not a whole lot that can beat that. In fact, a lot of characters have nothing that can beat that. Ignore armor means you can't block it. Power 10 means you're doing backbreaking damage, which is definitely worth the 3 gauge.
yeah.
Um, there, it's just a stat killer. and it does it extremely well.
Above curve, ignore option. Excuse me, above curve, ignore armor for people who are into more modern Exceed. If you're looking at like Bad Moon on Milia, above curve, ignore armor is already an incredible game closer when it doesn't deal 10 damage, right? Like
Right.
if you are
If you're allowed to hit with this, you probably win the game because it's 10 damage that they can't really do anything to stop or to retaliate against.
right,
And that's a third of the opponent's life, right?
even
Right up again.
even if they empty cross out, this is fast enough to deal with that on offense. Like this is if they're at range 4 and you have 3 gauge, they had better hope that they either make
we're in the situation where they're going to be holding on to EX cross
right
just in case they need to counter this.
right they either made a misplay or they have some kind of ranged dodge, some kind of answer to this card that because this is like you said, it's not complicated. They're going to know that they shouldn't stand at range 4.
Right. And it'd be a real shame if Mei Lien had stuff that guaranteed range 4 or that extended her range or in any way made this card hit more stuff than just range 4 exactly.
Sure. I mean, and I assume that in all likelihood, please correct me if I'm wrong, this is probably not going to hit for 12 or 14 damage because if you are hitting them twice with Raijin Oath, the game is probably long over. But
no, you're hitting with this as soon as they let you hit with them with it. So as soon as you get 3 gauge and you're at range 4 and you have this in your hand, you're slamming it. You're not even thinking too hard about it.
right.
Unless you know they've been holding that EX cross and then maybe you'll bluff it.
Right.
But yeah, you want to hit this 10 damage and it doesn't matter what else you can do with that. Like you're not going to spend a turn setting up Fierce.
Oh no,
and that's just another turn they can run away from you.
That wasn't even what I meant. That's really good advice though. What I meant was if you hit with Raijin Oath, now it's going to be in your gauge.
Oh,
and,
right.
And you will hit with the other copy of Raijin Oath. Probably not. At that point, you need to validate from gauge. It would probably it may be likely that this could hit to range 4 to 5 or 4 to 6 with your character ability.
I mean, we'll make it simple. You're never going to hit 6 gauge, or you're never going to hit with 6 attacks over the course of a game and need to do 20 unarmorable damage.
Exactly. So
they'll be dead before it happens.
The printed power on this card really is 10. It's just that 10 probably is more than enough.
10 is I'm going to win the game 9 out of 10 times for this one card alone, and nothing else I need to do actually matters that much.
Right. All right. And the range might be a lie. The range might be 4 to 5. It might be 4 to 7 if I really invest hard on this thing. Okay. Cool.
And just for some interaction notes, like, of course, Gale Extension interacts with it. So does Tailwind. Close 2 spaces and strike. So they're like, I'm going to play the range 8 game. You're not going to hit me at range 8. Mei Lien can hit you at range 8. That's not an issue for her. She has those options.
Right. Even boosting Falling Star Wish can help make Raijin Oath easier to hit.
Yeah, technically.
Okay.
I wouldn't use it for that purpose because, but.
Right, you would use it for when you need Falling Star Wish if you have to use it, but really... So
well, if I'm using Falling Star Wish to make Raijin Oath hit, that means... I guess I'm putting the other copy on top of my deck and then drawing at the end of my turn. But I would actually rather have both copies in hand and play EX. Because, now it's 4 to 5. They didn't see that coming, did they?
Yeah, okay.
They should have. They should have seen it coming.
4 to 5 or 4 to 6, 11, 7. Sounds pretty messed up, yeah.
Okay. Not very fair.
Again, not a complicated card, just a very, very strong card.
Yeah, and kind of the theme we have with Mei Lien is this card should not have these stats. No card on any character should have these stats, but it's worse on Mei Lien just because it's supported with your kit.
Is this, in the context of the kit, is this excuse me, the strongest Ultra in Exceed?
I think so, yeah. I would contend that it is, actually.
All right, you heard it here first, folks. We found it. After, 81 episodes, we found the strongest Ultra.
It has some really stiff competition, but yeah, this might be it, I think.
This is a messed up card. And
I can't think of very many Ultras where I say this wins the game by itself.
From what you're telling me also, and I promise we'll stop harping on Raijin Oath in a second, as you said, it's not complicated. But if Mei Lien's kit was this, and Raijin Oath just didn't exist,
She would still be extremely strong.
It
Yeah.
seems like she'd be a very reasonable, very strong character. This is just
Oh
ludicrous on top
no,
of it.
you underestimate her. She would be unreasonable even if this card did not
Even without
exist.
Rygenoth. Okay,
He just,
okay.
and we're gonna get into that. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, let's
buckle
keep
up.
going. Let's keep going then. Shall we just keep
All
going
right.
down the line?
Yeah. Dragon Tempest, also a contender for one of the strongest ults in the game. It's just happens to be the same kid as Reginald, so no one talks about it.
Sure. Yeah, I've never heard of
This
it.
is a 3/3/7. So again, extremely good stat line. For only 2 gauge, that stat line's worth it. Push the opponent as far as possible after advance 1, 2, or 3 spaces. Just an insane amount of zone control with this card. The number of things that can outspeed it, I can probably count on one hand. It is very much a utility ult, but it's allowed to be. And the fact that it only costs 2 gauge means that you can exceed and play both copies of this in one game.
Okay. And is that so my exceed mode is 3, this is 2, this 2 copies this would be 4.
Yeah.
That's 7 gauge. At that point, I assume that I would be running up against playing Rygenoth as well. Like,
Right.
is my gauge
We have
differential that
Reginoth
good?
in our kits. Yeah, we have Reginoth in our kit. We want to use Reginoth. But I'm just saying, like, if for some reason your opponent parried both copies or something, or they did something really sneaky with Balecore and somehow got rid of it,
Sure.
you have in another really strong Ultra.
A ridiculously strong backup ultra. Yeah, sure. I don't even mean like the two are in competition with each other. I more mean like um as outlining the parameters of what my budget is. It's I probably have 7 gauge to work with over the course of the game. I probably do not have 10. Is that accurate?
10 would be too much. Yeah, I think the opponent's dead by the time you hit 10 gauge.
Okay, so Exceed and Dragon Tempest and Rygenoth probably not going to happen. Also, probably not needed to happen. But
Right.
but uh, 7 gauge is actually workable, and I probably could do that. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, 8 gauge is workable. Exceed and Dragon Tempest and Reginoth. That's workable.
Okay.
And in fact, Dragon Tempest sets up Reginoth because when you push them as far as possible and then you choose to advance 1, 2, or 3, that usually means you'll end up at the range you want to be for your next attack.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And again, like all the stuff, like copy and paste all the stuff we said about uh, this could have more range. This could have more power. This like if you hit with this twice and you're in Exceed mode, this is a 3/7/7. That's that even without the stat line, that's already ludicrous.
Yeah, that is everything you would want in an ultra. This is the high end of what should be allowable for an ultra, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. Makes sense.
But we have both ultras so far. Both of them are ridiculous.
Okay. So again, in terms of what our gauge payouts are between Exceed mode, Ultra, there are no bad choices. There just might be better choices.
Yeah, I would say ultras are your better choices for gauge payout because they happen now as opposed to one turn from now.
Right. Okay. All right. So going way back to the beginning of the lesson, what you said was you would exceed unless you would, and you can afford to do both, but you would exceed unless you are hamstringing your ability to play ultras immediately.
Exactly.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, I would maybe exceed before playing Dragon Tempest because sometimes the 3 damage isn't worth it. But yeah, it's a tough call.
Okay, I gotcha. Tell me about Dragon Thrash.
All right, cool. Ridiculous card number 3. This is attacks at range 3 or greater do not hit you. This is just flat out dodges everything that's greater than range 3. And then as a special bonus, you have a hit, move the opponent 1 space. So if you hit that range 2, then all of a sudden they can't retaliate because they're going to be at range 3 now.
Right. Sure. Yeah. They play the sweep. You move them back 1. They're incredibly sad. And also, you could just hit with this at range 3 because you have a character ability.
You're a bit of a zoner already, but now you're also an anti-zoner.
Okay.
You hold on to this if you're facing anyone with really good range options, and you can just say, no, it doesn't work.
Sure. You've got you're exceeded, you're all set up, you're fighting a new 13 type character who's hitting you from across the board.
Yeah.
You pull them in, scoot them a little bit closer into range of Rygenoth and then kill them on your turn or something.
Yeah, this is one of the few cards that beats Reginald in the game. So Mei Lien opponents would really like to be Mei Lien,
For
just
having this
because.
card?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So and uh Lightning Strikes Twice, the boost has a lot of like this is one of the boosts that you really talked up as being particularly strong. This is really in competition for it. Dragon Thrash is very
It's a
good.
very strong competition. And
Okay.
in fact, in a matchup against someone who is really good zoning, it's legitimately going to make or break your game, deciding whether to use the boost or whether to use the attack.
Okay.
Because
So
you make your own decision, that can really change things.
major decision point. We can't help you here. But this card is important whether it's this or whether it's this.
Exactly.
I gotcha. Okay.
Now, we do notice that Raw, it does not hit at the same ranges that it dodges, so against fast stuff, you're choosing to dodge or to hit, unless you're stapling extra range to it with your ability or with a boost.
Sure.
In which case, it can hit and dodge, and there's no competition going on.
Sure. And I mean, if you are exceeded, this is on curve. This is
Exactly.
a dive like that moves the opponent. This is a tiger shot that also
Yep.
can't be hit back.
Yep. This is a. It's a really fantastic effect. It's not necessarily too strong, but it does synergize very well with your kit, and might be too strong specifically for Mei Lien.
In the context, sure, okay.
Yeah.
How about Halberdier?
Halberdier, we get to have a change of scenery. Now we have a card that's too strong in anybody's kit.
Okay.
This is
I thought after ridiculous card number 1, 2, and 3, I thought maybe we were going in the other direction. No, it turns out this one's too strong too.
Halberdier might be my favorite card in her kit, more than Reginald. It's not as strong as Reginald, but it sure packs a pretty potent effect. All right, so stat line is just an on-curve attack, right? 2 to 3, 4, 5. That's already good enough, especially in a character who can break the speed curve as easily as Mei Lien. Having on-curve stuff is good.
This could be a 2 to 3, 8, 5. It could be a 2 to 5, 4, 5, right? Like
right.
You're feeling pretty good.
And in particular, on your opener, it's a 2 to 4, 5, 6. What beats 2 to 4, 5, 6 on the first turn of the game? Not very much.
Right.
And this is, of course, assuming you're playing at EX, right?
Right, yeah. EX Halberdier, starting off, and again, I can't help but look at what the first line of text says.
Yeah, we're about to get to the horror show.
Yeah.
So opponents cannot move closer to you. This is actually part of a mix-up with Dragon Thrash. So Dragon Thrash says they can't hit you if they're at range, and Halberdier says they can't come in from range.
Right.
So if you have an opponent at range, you have a way to just... One of these two cards nullifies every possible threat they can make.
Right.
As kind of a trivia note, Halberdier straight up beats Inevitability. That should tell you something right there.
Hey, we found, for people who haven't seen the Ulrich lesson, we found the one counter to a card that no one can dodge, it seems like.
Yeah, the one perfect card in Exceed has to have a card that's even better than it somehow. So
okay, and that's Halberdier. Okay.
Just to add insult to injury, you have that hit effect of pushing the opponent one space. They already can't close into you with this one. You're kind of trying to outrange a lot of people. So now saying, not only are you not allowed to make up some of that distance on this strike, but you're in fact increasing the distance that they can't make up.
Sure. And I mean, there are also like some characters, grapplers, for example, will strike deliberately only to move into their preferred range. So this even if this isn't hitting them, this is shutting down everything they want to be doing. If your opponent has a really dangerous ultra that requires them to move in or moves them in as part of the effect, this could, at baseline, awesome. It turns off Assault and Dive. Those are good cards to turn off.
Yeah, exactly.
But some characters in some matchups, this like destroys entire lines of play, it seems like.
Yeah, this you're up against what's the season 3 guy who's the grappler?
Oh, you're talking about Zangief? Yeah, Zangief. Yeah,
this destroys his stun immune advance card, right?
Yep.
This card is on curve, so it's already very good for its purpose of kind of keeping people at range. But even if the opponent has crazy speed, they still can't move closer to you, right? They got their light assault. It doesn't matter. You're playing this on defense. It doesn't matter. You're still going to stop them.
This is a passive effect. Oh my god. Okay, so
Exactly.
I play. We're at range 3. You play assault into me. I play this on defense. I get outsped. It doesn't matter. You whiff and
Exactly.
I hit you for 4. All right, that's actually
Yeah,
really messed up.
yeah. This card just says that it flat out wins.
Okay, so this on its own wins the range 3 mix up. It beats dive. It beats assault. It pushes spike out of range.
It
Um,
pushes sweep out of range as
pushes
well.
sweep
Yep.
out of range. Okay, yeah. So without any other cool considerations, this just makes you dominant at range 3.
Yeah, Halberdier is one of the strongest specials in the game. It does not lose any normal interactions. It's neutral and cross, I guess. That's not saying a whole lot.
And you'd
Um,
probably like them to be like you'd pay 3 gauge to or 2 gauge with Dragon Tempest to push somebody really far away. You're okay with
yeah,
them crossing out on you.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So yeah, Halberdier is strong, and unlike inevitability, it doesn't require any setup to be strong. It is strong, just played as is.
Sure. Okay. How about Fujin Drum?
All right, so continuing our theme of having stuff that's on curve or above curve, now we have 1 to 4. Only power 2, so less power than a lot for stuff. But speed 5. So this is going to be above curve in your opening position without any kind of EX shenanigans, any kind of setup. And then, of course, it has that hit effect of push the opponent 2 spaces. You like to be at range because you have lots of ways to get range. Um, it's just a pretty solid card. Only thing holding it back is 2 power, but that's fine. You're usually playing this to get some free gauge, get a free 2 damage on them that they can't really retaliate against.
Okay. When we were talking about the many ways that Mei Lien has to build gauge, looking through her boost, she doesn't have much in the way of like bespoke gauge generation, but she can hit, and this is gonna hit.
Yeah, this is very reliable,
Okay.
and
So
not necessarily flashy, but most characters don't have stuff they can do at range 6, or they only have a few options, and of course you have Dragon Thrash to deal with when you're out there.
right. So this is a utility role player. The boost on it, it sounds like, is fairly situational. It's situationally valuable, but you probably have in many matchups fairly free access to Fujin Drum, so you can probably just sort of freely mash it.
Yeah, you can freely match Fusion Drum. I do like to use the boost on it once a match, but it's fine just getting that free damage in there and building that gauge. She does have pretty good uses for gauge, as we've seen.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine what you would use that gauge for with these 3 cards over here.
Exactly.
Okay. Tell me about Cloud Rider.
Cloud Rider. Unironically, this is the fairest attack in her deck. It is merely on curve, so it's 1 to 2, power 3, speed 6. As an after, it's advance 4 spaces and draw a card. So let's do a simulation so we can show what advance 4 looks like in practice.
Oops.
Have view here. We got another character card somewhere.
We just we
Oh yeah,
used
Mei Lien, here we go.
Mei Lien herself. Yeah.
So we have range 2, right? This is max range. Advance 4 would be 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
So it's taking you from range 2 to range 3. Or if you're at range 1, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and this goes from range 1 to range 4.
Right.
So this is kind of like a reverse cross. This is a cross that gets you out of corners instead of put you into one. Its best case scenario requires you play it under curve, but it's okay if you play it on curve. You might open yourself up to retaliation, but it's still getting some damage in. And the extra draw card on there is not going to hurt at all.
So the
And it's an after effect. So if for some reason you need to just close the gap in on a strike and the opponent's just going to whiff a block or something, you can use it to just jump in.
right, and in fact, in this specific position, Ragino.
Yeah, that's an interesting range to be at, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I can't imagine why you'd want to be at range 4. So
Yeah.
in this situation where I'm trying to uh get out of the way of something, specifically probably sweep is what I'm trying to avoid for a hit range 4 versus range 3.
Yeah.
Um Honestly though, again, if I'm at range 1
Yeah.
or at range 8, I'm setting up Ragnos with this card.
Yeah,
I
it has insane potential in terms of setup.
Okay, I'm just also conveniently dodging sweep when I play it at range 1.
Yeah,
Um
exactly. It works a lot like Tross in that regards. It's
okay,
Tross, but it's going from
and
the opposite side.
the sort of like safety to payout matrix of this card seems like as you said, the more unsafe it is, the better reward you get because you'll go to range 4. But also, you'd prefer to play this on defense, where it's even less safe.
Yeah, you definitely prefer to play on defense because this is a great way to kind of open up that range and just punish the opponent on your next turn.
Right. Okay. So in order to get every bit of reward out of it, you are not only playing it under curve, but you're also losing speed ties.
Right.
So be a little careful. But
yeah, it is an acceptable risk. It is something that you have to think carefully about. It's not free, but the reward for paying out means that you should actually not be too safe with it, right? If you're too safe and you become predictable, then you're letting the opponent play sweeps and stuff, and you don't necessarily need to do that.
Sounds good. Okay, and just otherwise, you have plenty of combos that you can do with it. Again, it seems like the boost is not incredibly competitive. It seems like you'd prefer to use New Horizons most of the time.
Right. I prefer to hit with Cloud Rider. Is the normal course.
Yep, makes sense. How about...
It's really on curve, so Cloud Rider is what I would call reasonably fair.
Right, and in the context of Mei Lien's kit, it is bottom tier, right? But this is a perfectly acceptable card.
Yeah, you will play it several times during a match, so it's not as overpowered, but it's still very good. Yeah,
sure. And also, I mean, if you've got one engage and you, again, not to harp on this too much, if you've got one engage and you're exceeded, this is actually breaking sweep. You don't even need to worry about you don't need to worry about dodging anymore.
Yeah, in fact, like exceeded Cloud Rider with a Cloud Rider follow up is just insane damage, right? One Cloud Rider, then another Cloud Rider, that's 10 damage total. That's the fate of the game. It's completely gone.
Yeah, that's if we aren't talking about her damage potential enough, when you look at these cards, just remember that she's got 4 power on top of them a lot of the time.
Yep.
Okay. Shall we move on to Raijin Knife?
Raijin Knife. One of the iconic shapes of Season 1 that just doesn't show up later on because people realized not great to have something that just arbitrarily breaks the speed curve at range 1.
I was asking Blue a couple of months ago probably about, the DP shape, the Shoryuken shape is always an above curve range 2 option. Are there above curve range 1 options? And he said yes, but no one likes them because they're kind of toxic.
Yeah, like people like Grasp is kind of a situational card, so people would like for it to at least hit.
And at least
Raijin Knife just says no.
At least fulfill its situational role. Raijin Knife is the new fastest thing at the range where things are allowed to be the fastest.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 118, so it's not doing any damage. Like even exceeded and with 1 engage, it's still not doing damage, right?
Right.
158 is really good, but that's not your primary use case. Your primary use case is to just be absurdly fast and stun out other fast things. And if you're playing Cloud Rider at range 1 to deal with slow stuff, Raijin Knife covers the other half of that mix-up where they try to play a Grasp on you.
It would push sweep out of range just as well if you've got space to move, and it would set up range 4 as a matter of fact.
Raijin Knife sets up range 4. That's a very important point for it.
And
you can safely play it on defense. Unless they focus. So unless they play focus on defense when you on their attack and they're at range 1, they're just going to eat Raijin Oath. That's just going to happen.
So actually, this is a 1 damage card that really does 11 damage on defense.
Exactly.
Because if you have 3 gauge, you will Raijin Oath them every single turn next turn.
Yep, that is exactly how that works.
Yeah, that's super goofy. It seems like so we talked about Gale Extension being a very valuable boost for her.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like this is another one that you would like to kind of preserve as a threat. So is it a tough decision on this card as well?
Very much so. Raijin Knife has so many applications because the push 3 is useful in so many situations. Using it as when you have that 1 card and discard, so you can hit with it at range 2 and push 3,
right?
Or just set up Raijin Oath, or it's not doing damage, but it's winning strikes. It's setting up you to win more strikes later on.
It's giving you kind of everything you want. You want this card. It seems like Gale Extension is honestly the use cases don't seem overlapping. If you are at range 1, you're probably looking at Raijin Knife as Raijin Knife. If you're not at range 1 or at range 2, you're probably looking at Gale Extension.
Yeah, and Gale Extension's also very tempting a lot of times, right? Because Gale Extension will turn on, say range 5 sweeps. It'll turn on range 4 Dragon Thrashes. It can do a lot of stuff that's pretty mean to the opponent.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So look at it situationally. Make the choice yourself. It's going to be a tough choice, but that is the kit. That's a messed up character, Jay.
Yeah, and to reiterate, since Reginald is the star of the show, despite everything else being worthy of lots of attention, I'm just going to point out all the different ways you have to set this up so you can guarantee a Reginald payout. So the first way is going to be anytime when you're at range 4 or 6, if you're exceeded, EX Reginald is part of the setup, so now you hit at range 4 to 6 instead.
Right.
The next setup is going to be Tempest Tailwind. Close 2 spaces and hit with it, or in case you have 1 copy and discard and you're exceeded or whatever, close 2 spaces and hit with it.
Right.
The other setup is going to be Dragon Tempest. Push the opponent all the way into the corner, close 2 spaces, and then hit with Oath. This is, of course, playing Dragon Tempest on defense in that case.
Right. Which, I mean, hey, if Raijin Knife is a good defensive option, so is Dragon Tempest.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Dragon Tempest doesn't have many setup options. It's kind of niche for that. Halberdier absolutely sets it up. They try to assault at range 3. You say no, and you also push them back, and now you're hitting with Reg and Oath. Fujin Drum sets it up. You push them too. Now you're hitting with Reg and Oath. Reg and Oath. By the way, Fujin Drum at range 2 is only 1 undercurve. It is absolutely acting like a mid speed in that range.
Similar to Cloud Rider, actually.
Yeah.
In terms of just not the same range, but you're doing the same thing with it.
Yeah. Cloud Rider, you play it at range 1 on defense. Then you hit with Reg and Oath. And then, of course, Reg and Knife, you play it on defense. And then you hit with Reg and Oath.
Right.
So this character has set up for days that guarantees Reg Oath is going to hit. And then when you hit with that, you probably win the game.
You probably just win, right? All right. So that again, that is a goofy card, and I can't help but notice there's one more setup, which is your opponent crosses out at range 1 ever, or if you already have one in your discard pile, crosses out at range, hits you with cross ever.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned earlier that Reg and Knife counters Grasp. I never said that Reg and Knife counters Cross because it'd be really funny if they tried to play Cross at range 1.
Yeah, and then they stun out, or you whiff with your attack, and you're so sad, and then you just hit them with Raijin Knife or Raijin Oath, rather. Okay,
exactly.
All right, so yeah, incredibly dominant threat, ample ways to set it up. If you don't have this, just do one of the many other messed up things you can do.
Yeah, and then but somehow they parry both copies, just kill them anyways.
Or yeah, you've got other damage sources. Just kill them with that. We've talked about the normals quite a bit. The range 4, range 5 versions of these various normals gets really scary. Range 3 grasp gets really scary. Any considerations about the normal boosts? Are you using those pretty much like a regular character would, or are things a little bit different for you?
Yeah, I'd say that normal boosts are something you do want to lean on. When we went through her kit, she has good boosts in her kit, but you also saw that her attacks are broken for the most part. Yeah. So her attack quality on her specials is higher than her boost quality on her specials.
Right, and her attack quality on her specials is higher than her attack quality on her normals, probably.
Exactly, meaning that when you're going for the boost game, you're looking at normal boost a lot of the time.
Okay.
I would say the plus power is really strong. Just because you've got a lot of stuff that's on curve that's going to guarantee that plus 2 power is going to come through.
Easy way to confirm hits, ups the value. Yeah. That makes sense to me.
Plus 2 speed is situationally strong, but sweep is 6 power, and I like to hit with 6 power, especially on Mei Lien, where closing out games is an important concern.
Right. Makes sense.
Other boosts, this is a situational card altogether in Mei Lien's kit. If you're facing a speedster, you might care about defend. If you're facing someone who can just have armor for days and also isn't scared of Reginald for whatever reason, you might care about Spike. But otherwise, Spike is probably less valuable in her kit than others.
Okay, so this might just be force then.
Right, spike might be force.
Okay.
Assault is great. You get extra range on it, and you can say confirmed advantage from way out here. Move into range 3, hit, get an advantage.
Sure.
Then play your other copy of Assault and do 8 damage.
Yeah, true.
Actually, wait, no, you can't do that because you'd have to have one in the discard. But still, Assault is good on both halves. It's good if you're playing it at range, and it's good if you're also playing it for damage.
Right, and it actually looks like backstep might be something that you like. A lot of characters do not particularly care about backstep. It seems like
Backstep is great,
yeah, backing up as Mei Lien seems pretty amazing.
Backstep is fantastic. She does have options for range 1, but I think typically she wants the opponent to strike into her at range 1. And if the opponent knows that she's trying to bait that, they might not oblige, in which case you can just backstep and get it over with.
Makes sense.
Block is fine. It's gauge generation. That's the main purpose of this. You can also use it to parry focus. You parry focus because you don't want to get red.
Right, sure. Because that is with all this information bleed, that is a weakness.
Focus is a good card for Mei Lien. It's also a good card for opponent because it counters Reg and Knife. And it's good for opponent because it has reading on it. So focus is actually extremely important in the counter matchup. But focus is doing mostly the same job it normally does, but reading is less important than normal because her card quality is high enough that she doesn't need to force the opponent to play something bad.
Okay. She's consistent enough on her own. You can just use focus as focus most of the time.
Right.
Okay.
Dive is fine. You don't generally need the close-in effect on it, which also means you don't generally need the extra range on it because it's still just closing in and hitting them.
Right.
It's not getting that extra dodge if you're doing it at range, meaning that dive is actually really good as a boost. Tech to get rid of really, Way of the Warrior. That's a fantastic use of dive. Tech to get rid of any boost that's annoying you. And Trask is also a good card on both halves of it.
This is also a Ride Oath setup.
Yeah, it's in the Reg and Oath setup. It's good in literally every single character in Exceed, but it's even better on Mei Lien because you like being at range all the time.
Right. Okay.
Just like
with backstep, you're okay with backing up. It's not a bad thing for you to cross out.
Yeah, and of course, Ren's good for getting out of the corner if you don't have Cloud Rider on hand, or if you want to be safe on getting out of the corner.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. So, maybe not perfectly standard normals usage, but pretty standard zoner normals usage, with the exception of the fact that your cards are so strong that you don't really care about your normals sometimes, even though normals with your character ability get really insane.
Yeah, you care about normals because +4 power or +2 range is absurd.
Sure. Okay, and they would be absurd on these cards too because this card is absurd.
Yeah, but the disadvantage of your specials is you only have so many of them.
Right. Okay, makes sense. All right, so that's everything. That's everything she can do. Do we want to talk a little bit about counterplay as we wrap this up? We've mentioned things here and there about what her weaknesses are, but how do you beat this? How do you
we've
beat
hit the main
Mei Lien?
ideas, but it's pretty essential to talk about her counterplay just because you have to have some idea of what you're doing against her. She can kind of get bricked by a bad deck order a little bit because if things aren't coming out in the order she needs to use them for discards or for gauge, makes things awkward. But you can't really control that as her opponent. So what you are looking for is discard information. You absolutely have to pay attention to what she has there, so you know what her options are, what options she's burned.
Right.
That's a really important part of your counterplay, especially if you have focus. Reading is important. One thing to note is that in neutral, she's relying on her attack quality to win strikes, right? She wins strikes cleanly by playing like EXs or having stuff engaged, or just hitting you without any setup. So in neutral, if you can play a lot of boost or get an advantage some way that's not directly related to strikes, you can sometimes overcome that card quality problem.
Okay.
Because as you notice, she doesn't really have a whole lot of boosts that are adding stats. She doesn't need to, right?
Right.
That's a different problem.
Her stats are
But she's
crazy
also not
enough
great.
on their own. But
Yeah.
it's like her stats are crazy enough to run over most other people's cards, maybe not other people's boosted cards.
Right, exactly.
Okay,
So that's one way you want to deal with her is you want to force her to stall a little bit. That way you have time to make your card quality improve through boost.
okay, so boost up, play sort of that older style exceed neutral, jockey for position, stay out of range 4, um,
Yeah.
and just boost up and establish threats the best you can.
Yeah, exactly. She also doesn't have all of her mobility is on her strikes, right? All of her positioning and movement stuff is on strikes. So again, if you need to move somewhere, do it outside of a strike.
Right. Okay.
Make your range selections before the strikes happen, not in the strike.
Right. Okay. And
Uh,
you do have this enormous, terrifying card to deal with. I
right.
assume this is just a parry target, right?
It is absolutely a parry target. You don't need to hold blocks against Mei Lien because they're not going to save you.
right.
You do need to hold focus because it stops your edge and knife, and your edge and knife is terrifying. But yeah.
Okay. So some characters have like an almost unavoidable, undeal withable kill shot card that you are going to get hit by, and you're going to have to just like take that lump and weather the storm and beat them anyway. With Mei
Right.
Lien, if you get hit with Raijin Oath, the game is probably just over.
It is technically possible to win, but it's very bad for you if you get hit with Reginald. Your game plan should never be how do I win after getting hit with this, right? Your game
Right.
plan needs to be how do I stop from getting hit with this
Right. And it's
to
going to
have
be
a
hard.
reasonable chance. Yeah.
It's going to be hard. She has so many ways to set it up, and
Yeah.
it's an above curve ignore armor. Like it's a scary
You would
card.
you would strongly prefer for both copies to end up at the bottom of her deck somehow on after Mulligan.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. And unfortunately, there's a reason that we talked about her being such a scary character. That is just a reality that you'll have to deal with. Okay.
Yep.
That's it for counterplay. Information control, boost threateningly, play good neutral into her, and just try to answer her threats.
That is about all you can do as far as I'm aware. Maybe someone
Okay.
will come up with some better counterplay.
Okay.
She is not unbeatable. She is not Alice tier as far as I'm aware, unless I
Right.
just play her badly. But you're probably always at a disadvantage in just about every matchup.
Okay, makes sense. And then finally, as always, I think I know the answer to this question, but we sometimes engage in a little bit of theory crafting with these older characters. If she stepped out of a time warp and showed up unchanged in Modern Exceed, I assume she's still a problem. I assume she just continues murdering people, and
She is
Modern Exceed design has not changed anything about that.
she is extremely terrifying in Modern Exceed. The fact that you don't have reading anymore makes fighting her so much worse than it already was. She might be ban worthy at that point if she isn't already. The one thing you have going for you, the only thing you have going for you, is you have lots of, and this is season 7 exclusive as far as I'm aware, because I'm not sure a whole lot of the characters do this.
Right.
But you have a whole lot of cancelable boosts that have movement on them.
Right.
Right. So being able to move and then strike, or move and then do something else, is going to be something she does not have tools that anticipate that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That sidesteps Halberdier. That sidesteps sidesteps her range dodge and Dragon Thresh. It gets straight out of Reg and Oath without giving her a chance to respond. So that is your saving grace there.
Okay, so her kit predates the existence of like action compression exceed being the standard. Right. But so the paradigm of Modern Exceed is like you're really strong on your turn, your opponent's really strong on your opponent's turn. Mei Lien is like she's really strong on her turn and also on her opponent's turn. Right. It might still be kind of an uphill fight.
I have not tested this, but I would anticipate that it's going to be pretty rough.
Okay,
I think she'd still have the advantage in most fights.
All right, yeah, maybe we should be happy then for the modern meta that she has been consigned to Red Horizon.
Yeah, she had her days of glory. It's time to let someone else take the stage.
Yep. Sounds good. Sounds good. All right. Well, those are all of my Mei Lien questions. Anything else you wanted to ask, or anything else you wanted to mention, Jay, before we wrap this up?
I think it covers it. Yeah, I think Mei Lien was a really fun character for her time. She had lots of cool tech to discover, despite having lots of stuff that's just simply strong without much explanation.
Right.
I think that if you want to do Time Warp Exceed, she's still fun to play around with and experiment with. But do be aware of player disparities and skill level. Like, don't bring this out against a new player unless you're pretty confident that they'll take it well.
Right. Yeah. Again, Mei Lien responsibly. Do not drink in Mei Lien. All of the various drug commercial disclaimers about don't operate heavy machinery when you're using Mei Lien, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Be careful of what your opponent wants to do in the game. All right. Well, Jay, thank you so much for this awesome lesson. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. Learned a lot. Folks at home, I hope you learned something too. Go play Mei Lien again responsibly. I will see you all for the next one. Goodbye, everybody.